Three generations.
Oh man, to be honest with you, I don't really think about that. I just think about working hard, keep stepping up, and keep up in the rankings and keep proving ourselves. And boxing changes so quick, man.
David Benavidez. Final day of training camp before his highly anticipated fight with David Morel was nothing short of intense inside his gym in Phoenix. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Benavidez prepared for the biggest challenge of his career. The two-time WBC super middleweight champion is known for his relentless pressure, sharp boxing, and impressive stamina, and he was making sure to leave no stone unturned as he fine-tuned his skills in the final hours before the fight. The session began with a fierce round of sparring, where Benavidez faced off against opponents specifically chosen for their ability to mimic Morel's southpaw style. The goal was to simulate what he would experience on fight night, and Benavidez didn't hold back. He unleashed a flurry of punches, doubling up on jabs, landing clean right hands and following up with deadly body blows. His movement was fluid and purposeful as he concentrated on shutting off the ring, guaranteeing that Morel wouldn't be able to escape his pressure. Benavidez's opponents were swift and tried to dance around him, but he kept right on top of them, not giving them a second to breathe. Benaz's father and trainer, Jose Benavidez Sr., watched closely from the sidelines, offering advice and coaching in between rounds. The sparring wasn't just about power, it was about strategy. Benavidez was focusing on making adjustments to deal with the tricky southpaw stance of Morel, shifting his footwork and defensive positioning to stay one step ahead. The pace was relentless, pushing Bennett's to his limits as the rounds ticked by without a break. It was clear that he was preparing for a long, hard fight, one where his endurance would be just as important as his power. After sparring, it was time for mitt work, where Benitez's excellent precision and power were on full display. His father yelled out different combinations, and Benavidez responded back with lightning rapid responses, the sound of leather. Striking the pads filled the room as he worked on everything from jabs and crosses to left hooks to the body and uppercuts. His technique was immaculate, each punch launched with passion and purpose. His father's voice cut through the flow of the session, making tiny tweaks to make sure everything was flawless. The focus was clear.
We just have to be ready for the opportunities, you know. But no, I never really thought about that. We're active. We just want to be active, and keep fighting whoever. Otherwise, we're gonna sit down, you know, waiting. We don't want to wait.
Constructing combos that would break down Morel's guard and set up powerful counters. The heavy bag work followed, and Benitez went straight to work, throwing brutal combinations and targeting the body. He knows that Morel has a tendency to get hit, and he's planning to make the most of that. Each punch landed with a thud, and Benavidez's sweat was pouring down, but he didn't slow down. His body movements were fluid, and he made sure to move his head after every punch, always aware of potential counters. He was not just focused on power, he was preparing for the type of fight that would demand constant movement, and defense conditioning was also a major part. a day's training, Benavidez has always been known for his stamina, and he worked hard to maintain that edge. He hit the treadmill for some explosive sprints, pushing his cardio to the limit. He also spent time jumping rope working on his foot. Speed and coordination essential for closing the distance and keeping up the pressure throughout the fight. There was no room for fatigue in his strategy. Every second required to count. His core exercises involving medicine, ball smashes and sit-ups helped prepare his body to endure the damage that comes with a high-intensity bout like the one he was preparing for. But arguably the most essential aspect of the day was the mental preparation. Benav spent a lot of time visualizing the fight. Running different scenarios in his head, he was focused and determined, knowing that this fight could define his career. He spoke to his team with unwavering confidence. His words weren't just a reflection of his belief in his abilities. They were a testament to the work he'd put in over the course of his entire camp. By the time his final training session came to an end, Benavidez was physically and mentally ready. His team was confident in his preparation, and as they wrapped up the day, there was a sense of quiet expectation. The fight is coming, and all that is left now was to step into the ring and execute the plan. They'd worked so hard to build. Benavidez is ready to make a statement, and the energy in the gym made it clear the showdown with David Morel would be one for the ages. Excellent news for Benavidez fan.
This is a real-ass fight, and one of, I would really go as far as saying, the 5 or 6 best you could make in this entire sport. You know how good unbeaten David Benavidez is. The way that he's adjusted with his commitment to his stamina and his gas tank, and what he does to fighters in the second half when he starts going downhill with that volume and that power. And then you've got David Morel Jr., who has such a cool and interesting backstory. The Cuban southpaw who relocated in Minneapolis, helped really build that or add to what is already an underrated and thriving local boxing culture and scene there. We see that when PBC goes to the Armory. But Morel can really fight, and he was one of those guys who was trying to fight the best in the world that he could in his 4th, 5th fight, right? He picked up a interim or secondary super middleweight title very early on in his march. And even though he looked, got to be honest, a bit human in his 175 debut on a recent Riyadh Cizan fight card when he took on, I believe it was Hot Rod Kalajic. I don't necessarily hold that against him. This is a real matchup, and what Morel as a southpaw brings is dynamic. Everything about him.
He removed the additional weight he was carrying just a month ago. The transformation happened fast, and with another month to go before the bout, he might become even thinner. In the latest clip, Benavidez bears a resemblance to Morel. But what actually differentiates him is his snappy combo. Punching Benavidez might run afoul of the Cubans with such an approach. Benavidez might be making a mistake by attempting to stand near and deliver his combos when Morel hit strong. That aggressive style served the Mexican monster well at 168, where he overpowered aging opponents like Demetrius Andrade and outmatched lesser threats like Caleb Plant. But if Benavidez brings that same reckless approach against David Morel or Arur, Imbeda BF, he won't just lose, he'll get knocked out.
Speed, his ability to place his punches, his power, his head movement and trunk movement to avoid shots, the balls he fights with, the sort of flow that he dances with. This is going to be an incredible clash and one of the bigger and better fights of 2025. And you know I'm going to get overly fired up when my sport, which historically will break your heart in between loving on you like it always does, when it gets on this run where all the fights we can think of have an opportunity to get made. I mean, a big part of that, of course, is Turkey Al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia. And shout out, right? I got issues at times with the Turkey experience, but certainly not in what he's trying to do in the box.
This is Benaz's first true test for 11 years. He built up his record against smaller opponents at 168. The flaws showed against Morel. Things could get even uglier, especially if he sticks to his volume punching approach, as seen in his recent training footage. It is claimed that Morel's terrible performance versus Ravia Kid in his light heavyweight debut on August 3rd is the sole reason Team Benitez accepted this battle. Morel had his opponent in trouble multiple times during the early rounds, but squandered the opportunity by hunting for a one-punch knockout. Instead of unleashing combinations, it was a costly lapse in judgment. one that exposed his inexperience against Benavidez. Expect a sharper, more disciplined Morel, who has learned from that mistake. Benavidez fights straight up with a distinct flow as if a faucet is switched on.
Regeneration.
And its stream is just going to gather strength along the way. His constant hitting might distract opponents to the point that the referee has to intervene and halt the punishment he's administering. Morel will try to counter that relentless onslaught with his compact high guard and well-timed level changes. Nevertheless, even with his disciplined defense, Benavidez's persistent pressure is like a rising tide against a crumbling sea wall. Its sheer might grinds opponents down until resistance becomes feud. Benavidez's blows are surely powerful. Although Morel's explosiveness, he makes him a one-hitter if the southpaw times his strike correctly and strikes a big shot before Benavidez sees it coming. He might well walk out of Las Vegas with 2 light heavyweight world titles. That prospect gets considerably more frightening. If he's altering his levels and launching the punch with explosive precision, in basic words, Morel doesn't have the professional experience that Benavidez brings to the table. Morel, meanwhile, has only engaged in 11 professional fights and has never faced a world champion. The edge of experience goes to Benavidez, and it's by a wide percentage. Morel and Benavidez have been able to irritate one another more and more with time, and their animosity is sincere. However, Benavidez has a little advantage in this mental battle due to his previously noted experience. Given that he has already defeated superior opponents, he is free to discuss and brag about anything he wants. Boxing his own fighting words into action, Morel can withstand shocking him in an upset.
Let's go.
However, Benavidez has the advantage here as well. Till then, Benitez tends to be more fluid in his approach, occasionally dropping his guard to unleash his punches with rhythm. In contrast, Morel maintains a more disciplined defense, holding his guard at forehead height, while ensuring his chin stays well protected. It's still unclear if he can manage Benavidez's relentless pressure. But on paper, the Cuban fighter holds the edge in terms of defense heading into this battle. This highly anticipated clash has been years in the making. As Benavidez and Morel face off with more than just the light heavyweight crown at stake, the winner has the opportunity to solidify their place as a dominant force in the division, potentially climb the pound-for-pound rankings, and carve out a lasting legacy.